All right. What's up, fam? What's up, all my early humanities people? I was advised to do this presentation with the slides in it instead of walking along with the slides, but having a video of myself, which obviously makes a ton of sense. I just didn't know I could do this before. If you don't know, you can actually record on your slideshow, on your PowerPoint. So there's a little record button, and you don't have to download Prezi or anything. Um, he may have said something about that, but I don't know, and I think this is super cool. So uh, pretty interesting that I've learned that in this class. I've definitely learned how to give online presentations a lot better. So major soft skill or hard skill learned there. Um, so back to medieval technology. If you haven't already seen this video, I hope you enjoy it. If you have already seen this video, this is just it with the slides included. So if you've already learned something, maybe not a reason to re-watch this, but here we go. So medieval technology, the thought for a lot of time is that there wasn't much that happened during the medieval times, the Middle Ages, synonymous with the medieval era. Um, but in fact, the medieval era had a lot of technological advancements, discoveries, innovations, and inventions. So as I grew up, I think most people have an assumption of a Gothic style, worn down, damp, dirty type of imagery in my head, kind of King Arthur, Celtics, those types of people that, there wasn't any real progress, there weren't good civilizations, it was basic farming and agriculture stuff, a lot of mud, a lot of oppression, and I think there probably was still a lot of that stuff. This is, I kind of think of it as being very dark, damp, muddy, not a lot of rights for the peasants. Um, but in fact, I think that, uh, it probably still was those things. Just it was kind of a marking of time getting better for the common man because of the technological advancements that were made during this period. It was not backwards technologically, but they actually it's crazy as you learn more about it. It's crazy how much they had. So sure, there was still plenty of oppression and mud and grunge, dampness to live in, but they had a lot of progression because of I think mainly because of the agricultural advancements that were made, which I'll talk about here in a second. But the big ones are the iron plowshare, the water or windmill that was used to grind grain, and the new way that a horse would be, the horse collar that didn't strangle the horse, so you could plow and cultivate land for longer, do more amount of land than before with the previous collars that choked the horse. So the advancements made during this time were definitely revolutionary and monumental, and I believe that we should have a different perspective and opinion about this time and give it uh, respect and appreciation for the foundation that it laid for future generations and eras. Um, Obviously, previous eras and eras that came after had plenty of inventions and innovations, but I think that a lot of the things that they did during this time were kind of the firsts, or changed the way that an item or an invention was, so that it could be fully converted into how we now have it. So on the left here, get out my pen. This right here is a cannon. Not really a giant fan of that color. This right here is a cannon. Um, some of the first ones. So Marco Polo says that he, or reported that he saw Chinese people using weapons, gunpowder weapons so firearms in the 1200s. So that's during the Middle Ages. Um, there's a Chinese scientist, different Chinese scientists that created gunpowder, and then it slowly spread through the Mongols and the other other Eastern cultures to the Europeans, who would eventually incorporate it into their warfare, but it took a while before it was efficient and capable, because it would have been expensive and not a lot of weapons would have been used. So at first, just kind of cannons and rudimentary cannonballs would have been shot, but as it progressed, it would have gotten a lot better, and it changed the way that we have warfare for the rest of history. So that's a pretty revolutionary thing that was made from the Middle Ages, is gunpowder and firearms. And then we also have over here, I guess this is better. Over here you have the old eyeglasses, which this era during the Middle Ages, they first realized that you could use different glasses, like pieces of glass lenses, to see. They called it nearsightedness, so they were helping nearsighted people see those things, and this progressed, as we now know, into eyeglasses and contacts and all sorts of things that, once again, I think that these two inventions right here really changed the way that humans interact, because you have a ton of violence, and then you also have, you're able to see and be an efficient human being, and live longer, not get killed because you couldn't see a tiger or something like that. I don't know. There's a lot of different pros to having glasses. And so let me go on to the next thing here. Here you have the water wheel. This is one type of water wheel that would have spun from the bottom, and then towards the top you would have had some sort of mechanism that would have ground grain or blown a furnace. And then right here, this one is a water wheel that the water once again is coming in from the bottom, but instead of it spinning like this, it would have been going on a full circular, vertical and then downward rotation, instead of all staying on one plane. So those two things, the water wheel and the windmill, were already around before the Middle Ages, but the Middle Ages is when they really capitalized on the power. They really harnessed that power and then used it towards their advantage for construction, agriculture, architecture, which falls under construction, architecture, and just being able to, like, the pulley system that was used on the dome and different things like that. And then you also, agriculturally, you have it used for grinding grain, which maximizes efficiency. You don't have people having to stomp the grain or thresh it, but instead something can just go around with a stone in a circular box and grind that grain into the material that a farmer or a peasant could have sold. So I think that is one of the major efficiency changes and agricultural changes that show how technologically advanced and innovated they began to get. And then right here you have the iron plowshare, which is like mind-boggling that they would have not had this before that time. And this would have helped maximize efficiency as well, because you could cultivate the land faster, which means that you could do more of it, which means you could have larger harvests, and that means you get more money, which is less strain on you. So I think that kind of goes back into more freedom being given to the everyday man, because he might not have been having to work so much, so hard for such long hours, but instead, your horse could have worked longer, and then you could have plowed, and it wouldn't have been as taxing on your body. And then once you had that harvest, you could have moved all of your product to a mill where it could have been ground. And moving it to the mill, you could have moved more of it, because the horse could have carried a larger weight because it wasn't being choked. And then once you get it to the mill, it could be ground more of it and faster with the water mill or windmill grinding method. So I think that's just magnificent that they could have done that much of a difference with those simple things. And then over here, you have, this is just a building that I thought was Gothic style and Middle Ages. So that's interesting. You get to see the spectacularness of their architecture and how intricate it began to get, how specialized it began to get, with the glass and the arches and then the carvings inside of the arches. It's everywhere. And so this came out of the Middle Ages and is important because it allowed things like this to be built, specifically this part of this building. This is the Duomo in Florence, which was, and I believe is, the largest dome of its kind, and it changed how architects worked because it's completely massive. Um, so it's completely massive. It's 91 meters high and 45.5 meters wide, which was the biggest of its time. It was built in the 1400s, but the pulley systems that were created to make it were revolutionary, and then being able to make something that massive was completely new, and it changed the game for construction and architects for the rest of the centuries to follow. So that's wildly important, to give credit to the architecture that also came out of this time, because the architecture shows like they were not backwards in their technology and their ability. They were progressive, and they could make magnificent structures, especially as you get to the later Middle Ages. Um, and then I'm going to hit you with the last slide over here. So discoveries. Some of these images are of things that already existed. So the water wheel, and then there was probably a wooden plowshare before the iron plowshare, but they innovated on them, and that means they made them better, and they made them more pliable and available for people that were around. Other items like the eyeglasses and the cannon were prototypes, rudimentary prototypes of inventions that would change the way that we interacted forever. And then being able to create massive buildings like the Dome in Florence, the Duomo, it shows clear signs of ingenuity and the capability of the people of the time, and their capability to think about what they need technologically and then make that with pulley systems, buckets, and scaffolding that would support them so you can make a 91-meter high dome. It's very obvious that the people from this time, and at this time they were not backwards, but I do believe it was a progressive age, in some manners, but you do lack the progression on human rights and gender roles, but purely technologically, I do think that they were progressive. So I hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoyed this class and some of my videos. Stay safe and enjoy the rest of your summer, and hopefully your coming Columbia State semester or your transfer to a university. Thanks for having me.